25-year-old Kevin Bacon would meet a man by the name of Mark Latunski on the dating app Grindr. He hoped he met the perfect holiday hookup. Unfortunately, what at first seemed to be a fun date would soon become the last time anyone would see Kevin Bacon alive. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back to my channel and Killer Concepts, the place where we talk about all things true crime. My name is Peyton. Please make sure to hit that red subscribe button down below and turn on your post notifications so you do not miss any future content. I do want to give a warning, as this crime is pretty heinous and some of what we talk about may be disturbing to hear. Today we are talking about the murder and mutilation of a 25-year-old hairdresser named Kevin Bacon. Kevin Bacon would be killed after meeting with 50-year-old Mark Latunski on Christmas Eve 2019 in Bennington Township, Michigan, after meeting on the LGBTQ+ dating app Grindr. According to A&E, Bacon began chatting with Latunski on Grindr the day of Christmas Eve 2019. He would then leave home at 5:20 p.m. that night to go hook up with Latunski. Less than an hour later, he would text his roommate Michelle Myers to say he wasn't sure when he was coming home. But on Christmas Day, Bacon would never appear at his family's house. Obviously, this was odd with it being a holiday. He was expected to be there. Kevin Bacon's family would report him missing, and this is when his vehicle would be found in a store parking lot later that day. Inside his car would be a bag of clothes and a cell phone, which obviously roused much suspicion after he met a complete stranger the night before. With the cell phone, the police would learn about Bacon's communication with 50-year-old Latunski. When the officers would search Latunski's home, they would find a room in the basement with a secret door. Behind this door, they would discover the body of 25-year-old Kevin Bacon hanging from the ceiling with his testicles removed. I know that is a horrible thing to picture, and I apologize. We will get into more of why this apparently was in a little bit. I want to go back now and discuss who Mark Latunski is and how his life ultimately led him to committing this heinous crime. This definitely isn't our typical case. This one actually revolves a lot around mental health and the mental health of the individual who committed the crime. So we really need to talk about him as a person to try and understand what happened or why it was ever done. Much of the information regarding Mark Latunski has been taken from the A&E article linked below, as well as the I'm Related to a Killer episode about him. I do not have any information regarding his early life, but we can go as far back as when he met his ex-wife. Mark Latunski would meet his ex-wife named Emily through a mutual friend of theirs who set them up. Emily would fall for Latunski over the course of a year. She said in I'm Related to a Killer that she liked his calmness and that he was passionate about things, hardworking, and he was very kind. Mark Latunski was described as a super intelligent man. When he would meet Emily, he was a chemist and she worked at a preschool. He had graduated from Central Michigan University with a bachelor's in chemistry and then would go on to Iowa State University to earn his master's degree. Per A&E at the time, Latunski was making upwards of $100,000 a year. In 2001, the two would get engaged and then they would tie the knot in August of the same year. Everything seemed to be going well for the two of them. Something that I want to mention that will be important later is that Emily described Mark as always being super clean shaven and put together. He very much looked like the chemist that he was. The two would buy a house to fix up and start their family. They would end up having 4 children altogether. Emily said that Mark was a great father and he doted on his children, but soon all of this would begin to change. What seemed to be a picture-perfect life would begin to turn into an absolute nightmare. One of the first things Emily mentioned in the documentary was that she had found a picture of a naked man on Mark's computer. When she asked him about it, he would explain it away by telling her that he was comparing himself to the naked man And she would just brush it off and tell him that he had nothing to worry about and he didn't need to compare himself to anyone. She thought he was perfect. In 2010, though, things would really start to take a turn. Emily would become increasingly concerned about Mark's mental health. She said that he was starting to say very concerning things. He wasn't making sense. He was having very paranoid and unrealistic thoughts. And due to this, Emily would convince him to check into a mental health hospital. The mental health hospital would keep him for 5 days. Mark Latunski would be diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia and severe depression. More specifically, A&E reports it was, quote, severe, recurrent, and chronic major depression with psychotic features, adjustment disorder with depression and anxiety with paranoid schizophrenia and borderline personality traits, end quote. He would immediately stop taking the medication that they gave him when he would get home. And then he would go on to admit to his wife that he had been having affairs. He was sleeping with men on business trips, and he was meeting up with them after meeting them on dating apps. He would tell Emily that he wanted to still make their marriage work, though, and he would convince her to go to a marriage counselor with him. She would agree to give him a year to try and figure everything out. But Emily would say that in that year, he did not take anything seriously. He continued to have affairs outside of their marriage with men. And so in 2012, she would file for a divorce after 10 years of marriage. She would move out of the house with their children and would end up moving into her parents. After they divorced, Mark would still see the kids. He was able to have unsupervised visits with them every other weekend. Everything seemed to be going good until he began to have delusions again. Mark Latunski would have to visit a mental health hospital once more. He was once again given medication to help with his diagnosis, but he would refuse to take the medication. Emily explained that he refused to take it because he believed they were trying to poison him. According to I'm Related to a Killer, in August of 2013, Mark Latunski would be permitted to take his children for 2 weeks. However, when it was time to give the children back to his ex-wife, Mark would refuse. Emily would have to try and request a court order to get her children back. Latunski at first was not home when they went to get them. He had actually taken the children to a water park. He would finally give the kids back, and the police would file kidnapping charges against him. But he would actually be deemed unfit to stand trial, and with this, the charges would be dropped. From here on out, all future visits with Mark and his children were to be supervised. He would do one supervised visit before discontinuing communications altogether with his children because he didn't believe that they should have to have supervised visits. Mark would soon again get married, this time to a man named Jamie. Jamie said that they had a wonderful relationship. Everything was going really well. And in 2018, Mark would reach back out to Emily to say that he wanted to see his children again. Keep in mind that this was 4 years later. He had not spoken to his children in 4 years. And I'm Related to a Killer, his daughter would mention how awkward it was to see her father again. She had a lot of anger and resentment towards him for pretty much abandoning them, and she said he just moved on like that never even happened. His daughter, Eliza, would also say that he didn't look like the man she really knew. He had long hair with a braid and a really long beard. Earlier I mentioned how he was always super clean shaven, so obviously his new look really came as a shock. It wasn't the person that they knew, and it was the exact opposite of the person that he used to be. At this point, his life really began falling apart. His mental health began declining again. He began to have affairs in his marriage to Jamie. Then in February of 2019, 2019, Mark Latunski would lose his job, and he would begin having delusions again. Jamie Arnold would end up leaving Mark, telling ABC 12 News, quote, "I knew there was something not right, that his thinking something was wrong, that there was some kind of delusional, paranoid delusions. He would just say that the neighbor was contaminating our water, that his children were not his children, his family was not his biological family, that I was some leader of some gray, green-eyed people, that the world was going to turn upside down," end quote. Mark's delusions got so bad that he stopped seeing his children again. He was saying that they weren't his. He was insisting that they did not belong to him. At this point, since Mark had lost his job, he would begin to sell himself to make money. He would meet men on apps and pretty much do anything that they requested of him. Latunski would also just continue on with casual hookups as well. 2 of these hookups would go very, very badly and can now be seen as a step towards his ultimate crime. A&E reported that in October of 2019, a 48-year-old by the name of James Carlson would call 911. Carlson would report that he had escaped from Mark Latunski's basement after he cut himself free from chains with a butcher knife. Carlson had apparently traveled from New York to Michigan for sex. Then in November, one of Latunski's neighbors, Michael Parks, would encounter a man covered in blood on his front porch. Quote, "He's got purple hair, he's wearing a leather skirt, and he's got a couple of belts across his chest," Park said. "This gentleman is grasping my arm with deathly fear, screaming, 'Help me, keep him away.' Just screaming at the top of his lungs. He wants to hurt me, he wants to hurt me." Another vehicle pulls in my driveway, and out comes who I now find out is Mark, wearing a leather skirt, belts across his chest, no shoes, no shirt on, his beard is braided, a very odd-looking gentleman," end quote. Parks reported to Fox 2. In neither of these cases was there an arrest. Had there been, maybe Kevin Bacon would still be alive today. Now, I don't know what all the Michigan State Police did in this situation, that there was no arrest, but it is not hard to wonder what Bacon's fate would have been had they arrested Latunski then. Everything would come to a head then on Christmas Eve of 2019. This is when 50-year-old Mark Latunski would meet 25-year-old Kevin Bacon at a store and take him back to his home, never to be seen again. As I said previously, police would connect Mark Latunski to Kevin Bacon's disappearance when Bacon's family would report him missing, and investigators would find his cell phone in his car at the store. When the police would confront Latunski about what was going on, he would let them into his home to look around with no problem. This is when they would find the mutilated body of Kevin Bacon hanging upside down from the ceiling. Latunski would admit to investigators what he had done. He would tell him that he had stabbed Bacon, slit his throat, and then hung him from his ankles, removed his testicles, and ate them. Honestly, there is interview footage with Latunski that you can clearly see that he is unbothered by it all, no emotion. He compares cooking Bacon's body parts to cooking Rocky Mountain oysters. There is no regard for the victim at all. But you can also see a lack of reality as well. He begins telling police that he isn't even Mark Latunski, and that he is actually a man from royal lineage named Edgar Thomas Hill. It was all extremely bizarre behavior. Latunski would also tell police that Kevin Bacon had told him that he wanted him to kill him, that it was a fantasy of his. Other reports said that the two had come up with a kidnapping fantasy where Latunski was to come take Bacon from the supermarket blindfolded and handcuffed. When they got back, then they had consensual sex, but then after that is when Latunski would heinously kill Bacon. According to the police, this has a little bit more meat to it in terms of possibility. ABC 12 noted in 2020, 51-year-old Mark Latunski would be charged with open murder and mutilating a body. Per CBS News, a date for the trial was not immediately scheduled as Latunski was initially found incompetent to stand trial. This would change after he received mental health treatment. However, shortly before he would go to trial, he would end up pleading guilty to the murder of Kevin Bacon. The Detroit News stated, quote, Latunski pleaded guilty in September to 2 counts of open murder and mutilation of a body, end quote. Mark Latunski will spend the rest of his life in prison without the possibility of parole for the murder of 25-year-old Kevin Bacon, which honestly is probably one of the best outcomes because mental health issues or not, the crime is just terrible and unnecessary, and he's probably a danger to the public. I could not even begin to try and understand what all of this has put Kevin's family through. I would like to take a second to share a statement made by Kevin's mother, Pamela Bacon, read during sentencing that I found in the article by the Detroit News. Quote, our world has been shattered. Even though we have such great memories of our son, our lives will never be the same, or will our family. I don't understand why anyone could want to hurt our son, especially in such a horrific and unbelievable way. Now, Christmas for our family will never be the same to us, thanks to you taking our son away from us. Even though we will finally get justice for Kevin, it still doesn't feel like enough, and you still get to live and do things because a pig like you can never have remorse. In your sick, twisted mind, you probably think you didn't do anything wrong, but in reality, you took our world away. This Christmas, I hope you suffer like we have. I hope you feel pain because you are all alone with all the years yet to come, end quote. Kevin Bacon's family, as well as the prosecutor, believes that the mental illness defense was fabricated for Latunski's benefit to get out of his crime. But there is just no way that we will ever really know. My heart goes out to this family. This did happen several years ago, but I do not think the pain will ever truly go away for them. I also think of Mark Latunski's kids as they now have to deal with the fact that their father killed someone. I just couldn't imagine. With that being said, that is all I have for you today. Please make sure to hit that red subscribe button down below and turn on your post notifications so you do not miss any future content. If you have case suggestions, please send them to killerconceptsvlog@gmail.com or comment them down below. All of my links for social are down below in the description box, as well as all of my sources used in today's video. Before you go, just remember that the world's most dangerous minds hide in the most unlikely places. Stay safe.